My name's Adrian. I'm 29, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one in the family, the one who shows up when invited, keeps the peace, and leaves before drama has a chance to find me. I work in IT, own a small condo, and live about 40 minutes away from most of my relatives. We're not the warm, every Sunday dinner kind of family, but we've always at least done the big holidays together, or so I thought. It was 2 nights before Christmas when I was scrolling through Facebook and saw it. A photo of my entire extended family seated around a long, beautifully decorated table. Silver candlesticks, crystal glasses, matching plates with gold trim. Everyone was dressed to the nines, smiling for the camera. The caption read, "Annual Family Holiday Dinner." Couldn't be happier to spend it with those who matter most. My stomach twisted. I checked the timestamp. It was posted an hour ago. No one had mentioned it to me. Not in the group chat, not in passing conversation, nothing. I stared at the photo, zooming in. My aunt and uncle were there. My parents were there. Even my cousin Evan, who lives out of state and never shows up to anything, was there. And me? Not a seed in sight. For a minute, I thought maybe it was some smaller, pre-holiday gathering, something that wasn't meant to be the main event. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. The place cards had names on them. Everyone had gifts under the tree behind them. This wasn't a casual get-together. This was the dinner. The one we'd had every year for as long as I could remember. The one where Grandma used to cook her famous roast before she passed. And we kept the tradition alive by rotating the hosting duties. Something in me clicked. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the sting of being excluded so blatantly. But I wasn't going to just sit at home and scroll through pictures like some stranger. I put on my best charcoal suit, grabbed the bottle of expensive wine I'd been saving for the holidays, and drove over to the address I recognized from the photo, my uncle's house. When I pulled up, cars were parked along the street, the house glowing with warm light from the inside. I could hear faint music through the walls. My breath clouded in the cold as I walked to the door and knocked. The man who opened it wasn't family. It was a hired host, clearly part of the catering staff. He smiled politely, but blocked the doorway. "I'm sorry, sir. This is a private event." The host requested no extra guests. At first, I thought I'd misheard him. "I'm not an extra guest," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm family." He glanced at a clipboard in his hand and shook his head. "Your name isn't on the list." Something in my chest tightened. "Can you just let them know Adrian's here?" He hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside slightly to speak to someone over his shoulder. A few seconds later, my cousin Emma appeared in the doorway, wearing a deep red dress and holding a champagne flute. She looked me up and down, then smirked. "Oh, hey, didn't think you'd find out about this." "Find out about what?" "The dinner everyone forgot to mention," I asked, my grip tightening on the wine bottle. She laughed, a short, cold laugh that made my skin prickle. "It's not that we forgot. We just kept it small this year. You know, immediate family only." I glanced over her shoulder, seeing at least 20 people crammed into the dining room, including second cousins and plus ones I barely recognized. "Right? Immediate family." Emma's smirk widened. "Come on, Adrian. You know you're not really family. Not like that. We just didn't think you'd fit the vibe." For a moment, I stood there frozen. My ears burned, my heart pounding, but my voice came out steady. "Got it," I said quietly, turning away before she could see the heat in my eyes. I walked back to my car, the wine still clutched in my hand. I'd barely pulled out of their driveway when my phone buzzed. A new email notification from my credit card company. I glanced at it and almost swerved. "Transaction alert. $4,200. Catering by Ambrosia." My family's catering bill. On my card. It hit me like a punch. I'd lent my parents my card months ago when their own had expired, so they could book some travel reservations. They'd obviously kept the number. And now, here it was, paying for the dinner I'd been deliberately excluded from. I gripped the wheel tighter, every thought in my head boiling into one sharp, cold conclusion. This wasn't just a slight. It was an insult, and they just handed me the perfect reason to do something about it. But first, I needed to make a call. And that's when everything started to shift. I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to let the chill December air cool me down, but my thoughts kept circling back to the same point. This wasn't new. This wasn't even surprising. It was just the most blatant version yet of something that had been happening for years. I'd been the backup invite, the afterthought, the one they called when they needed help moving furniture or fixing their Wi-Fi. but never when there was a seat at the real table. The examples started flooding my mind, one after another. There was the year my cousin Evan got a new car, and the whole family threw him a congratulations cookout, like he'd just been accepted to Harvard. Meanwhile, when I bought my first place, the only acknowledgement I got was my mom texting, "Send us the new address." No party, no flowers, no "we're proud of you." Just a line in the group chat, so they knew where to send junk mail. Or the time my uncle's business was struggling and he borrowed my laptop for a few weeks because his was on the fritz. When I asked for it back, he acted like I was being selfish for wanting my own property returned, saying, "You don't even use it as much as I do." I ended up buying a new one just to avoid the drama. And then there was Emma, always the family favorite. She could forget someone's birthday, cancel last minute, or even forget to pay someone back, and it was brushed off as her being busy or stressed. If I so much as missed a single holiday event, it was Adrian's pulling away from the family again, whispered just loud enough for me to hear. As I drove, I couldn't stop thinking about how deliberate this dinner exclusion felt. Not just a casual oversight. This had planning behind it. Someone had made a guest list, and at some point, my name had come up and been scratched off. I pulled into a quiet parking lot near a coffee shop that was closed for the night. I sat there with the engine idling, staring at that email notification on my phone. $4,200. That was more than I'd spent on groceries in 6 months. My mind kept going back to the moment Emma had smirked and said I wasn't really family. Not really family, but apparently close enough to foot the bill. The more I thought about it, the more the whole picture came into focus. I remembered last year's holiday dinner. I'd offered to split the cost with my parents, since they were hosting and paying for catering. They'd waved me off, telling me it was handled, and then later hinted that Emma had covered most of it. That little detail had been repeated all year, anytime Emma wanted to paint herself as generous. But now, I had to wonder, had my card been the most of it back then too? My phone lit up again, this time a text from my mom. "Mom, we'll pay you back next month. Don't make a big deal out of this. It's Christmas." No apology. No explanation for why I'd been excluded. No "wish you were here." Just a directive to stay quiet. I stared at it for a long time before the next one came through. "Dad, you know your sister, meaning Emma, has been under stress with work. We just wanted to give her a nice night. Don't guilt her over this." There it was. The unspoken rule of my family, spelled out in black and white. Emma's comfort comes first, even if it costs you. Literally. I typed out a reply, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. I wasn't going to waste words tonight. Not when I had a far better way to respond. Still, I couldn't shake the image of them all in that warm, glowing room, clinking glasses and laughing, pretending they hadn't gone out of their way to leave me out. I imagined them opening gifts, telling stories, and when my name came up, if it came up, it would be with some offhand remark like, "He probably had something else going on." I'd spent years swallowing moments like this, letting them pile up quietly in the background. But this time, something was different. This time, the disrespect came with a receipt. I leaned back in my seat, letting the quiet hum of the car surround me, and made a decision I knew I wouldn't be able to take back. It wouldn't happen tonight, not yet. But tonight had planted the seed, and soon enough, they were going to find out exactly what not really family looks like. 2 days later, Christmas morning came and went without so much as a text from anyone in my family. Not even the usual generic "Merry Christmas" group message. I spent the day alone in my condo, trying to keep myself occupied, made coffee, half-watched some movie on TV, even went for a walk, but my mind kept drifting back to that night, to the smug look on Emma's face and the tight little smirk when she said I wasn't really family. By the afternoon, I was starting to think maybe I'd just let it go. Not forgive, never that, but at least shove it into the mental drawer where I kept all the other slights they'd handed me over the years. But then my phone buzzed with a notification from my bank, and everything inside me shifted. It wasn't a payment refund for the $4,200 they owed me. No, this was an additional charge. $1,800. From the same catering company. My chest went cold. I stared at the notification, thinking maybe it was some delayed processing from the original bill, but when I called my credit card company, the representative confirmed it was a new transaction. That's when I learned the truth. The catering company had processed a last-minute Christmas brunch order billed to my card again. And the delivery address? My parents' house. I hung up without saying much, my ears ringing. It wasn't just the money, it was what it meant. They hadn't even waited a week before using me like some invisible ATM. And they'd done it knowing full well that I knew about the first charge. No shame, no hesitation. I called my mom immediately, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. Did you just charge another catering order to my card? Her tone was flat, almost bored. Oh, that. Yes, we needed something for the brunch today. We figured you wouldn't mind since you weren't hosting anything yourself. Mind? You didn't even ask. Adrian. She interrupted, with that tone she used when she wanted to shut down a conversation. It's Christmas. Don't be petty. You make good money. This is nothing to you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that you didn't invite me to either of these meals, but you still think it's okay to bill me for them. You're overreacting, she said, and I could almost hear her rolling her eyes. We wanted to keep the gatherings stress-free. Well, you tend to make things tense. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles ached. Tense? You mean I ask questions you don't like? There was a pause, then she sighed. Honestly, Adrian, maybe it's best if you focus on your own life and let us handle ours. We'll pay you back when we can. And just like that, she hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. But as bad as that was, it wasn't the moment that really broke something in me. That came a few hours later, when I was scrolling social media and saw a new post from my cousin Evan. It was a video of their Christmas brunch. The camera panned across the dining table, fresh pastries, an entire roast ham, mimosas, trays of fruit, and then it stopped on Emma. She was holding up a glass and saying, "Huge thanks to Emma for covering the cost of today's brunch. You're amazing." Everyone clapped, and my parents, sitting right beside her, nodded along like it was the truth. That was the moment. Not the exclusion, not the charges, but the deliberate erasure, watching them hand my contribution to someone else's credit, smiling while they did it. They hadn't just used me. They'd rewritten the story so I didn't even exist. Something inside me went very still. It was like a switch flipped, and whatever part of me had been holding on to the idea that maybe, somehow, they cared, just shut down completely. I didn't feel hurt anymore. I felt focused. And for the first time in years, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The day after Christmas, I woke up to a quiet, so deep it almost felt heavy. No phone calls, no texts, no plans. Just me in my condo, the winter light dull and gray through the blinds. My friends were busy with their own families, posting photos of big dinners, goofy pajama traditions, and wrapping paper chaos. I scrolled through them with my coffee in hand, trying not to compare, but the truth was, I couldn't stop. I'd never felt more on the outside looking in. I'd been excluded before, sure, but this was different. This was the first time I realized I had absolutely nothing tying me to them except blood, and even that felt more like a bad contract I'd never agreed to sign. The next week dragged. Every time I opened my banking app, those catering charges stared back at me, still unpaid. My parents didn't reach out. Emma didn't reach out. The family group chat, silent for me, was apparently still alive for everyone else. I found out by accident when a coworker, who's friends with my cousin's wife, mentioned she'd seen all the funny New Year's photos your family posted. I tried to work, but even simple tasks felt like pushing through mud. I wasn't just hurt, I felt hollow. Like they'd taken something I'd been holding on to for years, some quiet hope that if I just kept my head down and did right by them, I'd eventually be accepted, and crushed it without a second thought. One night, around 1 a.m., I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the glow of the screen reflecting off the cold mug of tea beside me. I pulled up my credit card account and stared at the dispute transaction button. My finger hovered over it. Part of me wanted to slam the button right then and there, wipe out both charges, and let the catering company chase them for payment. But I didn't click it. Not yet. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about getting my money back. This was about making sure they understood exactly what they'd done and that it wouldn't happen again. I started taking notes. Dates, amounts, the exact words my mom and dad had said on the phone. Screenshots of the catering charges. The brunch video where Emma got the credit. I saved them all into a folder on my desktop labeled simply F. It was almost therapeutic, collecting the evidence. For the first time since the dinner, I felt a little spark of control returning. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, But I knew I wasn't going to let this fade into just another story I vented about to a friend over drinks. This was going to matter. And then came New Year's Eve. I was sitting alone on my couch, flipping through TV channels, when a photo popped up on my feed, my parents' living room, filled with balloons and confetti, champagne glasses in hand. Emma was in the center, holding a giant gold 2024 sign. The caption? Another perfect year with the people who matter most. No tag for me. No mention. Just the same curated circle, smiling as if the world outside their little bubble didn't exist. That was the moment I closed my laptop, leaned back, and made the quiet decision I'd been circling for days. I wasn't going to chase them for inclusion anymore. I wasn't going to argue for a seat at their table. They'd taken enough. But the money? The disrespect? The public lie? Those, I was taking back on my terms. January rolled in quietly, and for the first time in years, I didn't start the year by trying to mend fences with my family. No, hope we can see each other more this year messages, no polite holiday thank yous for things I didn't even want. I went silent. And strangely, that silence felt like breathing fresh air. Instead of waiting for an invite that would never come, I threw myself into work. My company had just landed a big contract with a tech firm overseas, and I volunteered for extra hours. The project was complex, high-profile, and exactly the kind of thing that could lead to a major promotion. I didn't mind the late nights. It kept my mind occupied and gave me a sense of progress, of momentum. By February, my efforts started to pay off. I got a glowing performance review and a quiet heads-up from my manager that I was in the running for a leadership role that would come with a significant salary bump. More money wasn't just nice, it was power. It meant more freedom, more options, and less dependency on anyone. Outside of work, I started fixing up my condo. Nothing flashy, just improvements I'd been putting off. New kitchen fixtures, repainting the walls, upgrading the home office. Every time I finished a project, I felt like I was taking back another piece of my life, one that wasn't tied to anyone's approval but my own. Socially, I began reconnecting with people I'd let drift away because I was always obligated to family events. Old friends from college, a couple of coworkers I'd never gotten around to hanging out with outside the office, even my neighbor across the hall who turned out to be a great cook. My weekends started filling up, not with people who saw me as an afterthought, but with those who actually wanted me there. And then, in early March, came the tipping point. My manager called me into her office and offered me the leadership position. Along with the raise, it came with a company card and a small team reporting directly to me. The kind of role that not only looked good on paper, but also meant I'd have a much bigger professional network. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my family was busy pretending I didn't exist, I was building a version of my life where I didn't need them at all. But the more my career and personal life improved, the more one thought kept circling back in my mind. I now had more leverage than ever to respond to what they'd done. I wasn't rushing it. I was letting the months stack up, letting them believe they'd gotten away with it. Every time they posted another family gathering without me, every time Emma smugly tagged herself in photos about her generosity, I quietly saved the screenshots. By spring, I wasn't just stronger emotionally. I had a financial cushion, a better job title, and the kind of connections that could open doors most people didn't even know existed. And I knew that when the moment came to act, I'd have the resources and confidence to make it count. Because revenge wasn't going to be some petty outburst or a one-time sting. It was going to be precise, public, and unforgettable. It was mid-April when the setup practically fell into my lap. I was at a corporate networking event, one of those slightly awkward mixers where you balance a drink in one hand while making small talk with strangers, when I overheard two people from the catering industry chatting near the bar. They were talking about high-profile clients, late payments, and how certain families in town had reputations. Something clicked in my head, and before I could overthink it, I struck up a conversation. I mentioned I'd had an unfortunate experience with a catering company recently, and within minutes, they were swapping stories with me. I didn't name my family outright, but I gave just enough detail for one of them, a woman who managed accounts for several local vendors, to recognize the situation. "That sounds like the Wilson events," she said casually, sipping her wine. "They're known for late payments, but they book big. Fancy dinners, brunches, holiday spreads. Always act like they're doing us a favor by hiring us." I smiled politely, but inside, my thoughts were racing. She didn't know the half of it. Over the next few weeks, I kept in touch with her. Nothing suspicious, just the occasional coffee meetup under the guise of learning more about the event industry. That's when she told me something that made my pulse quicken. Most catering companies in the city shared vendor notes. If a client had a history of late payments or disputes, it often got passed around informally so others could protect themselves. I didn't need to fabricate anything. I had the receipts, literally. 2 major catering charges on my personal card, unpaid. Screenshots of texts where my parents admitted they'd pay me back eventually. And the brunch video where Emma took full credit for paying. All of it documented, all of it ready. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I could aim bigger. See, around the same time, my new role at work put me in charge of selecting vendors for our corporate events. The kind of events that catering companies would compete for. And as part of my new responsibilities, I now had access to a network of high-end service providers, many of whom my family had likely booked before. It meant 2 things. 1, I could control who got the big contracts from my company. And 2, I could quietly make sure certain clients didn't get the same warm welcome they used to. Still, I didn't rush it. I wanted to time it perfectly. So I watched. I waited. And then, in early May, my cousin Evan posted in the family group chat a message I was still part of, though no one spoke directly to me anymore. Save the date, June 10th. Big family reunion at the lake house. Catering by Ambrosia again. Same as last Christmas brunch. The same company. The same card-on-file system. And given how my parents still hadn't paid me back, I could guess how this one would be handled. What they didn't know was that by then, I'd already had a few quiet conversations with Ambrosia's accounts manager. Friendly, professional conversations, where I just happened to share the full story of my personal experience with this family, complete with proof. I didn't tell her what to do with the information. I didn't have to, because by the time June rolled around, my family would walk straight into a situation they couldn't charm, lie, or smirk their way out of. And I'd be watching every second of it. June 10th arrived warm and bright, the kind of day my family would have been bragging about for weeks if they'd bothered to invite me. I wasn't on the guest list, not that I'd have gone, but I knew exactly what time things would start. Evan's group chat message had been specific. Lunch served at 1 p.m. sharp. By 12:45, I was parked a good distance away from the lake house, engine off, windows cracked, sipping an iced coffee like I was just another passerby enjoying the afternoon. From where I sat, I could see the long gravel driveway and the steady stream of luxury cars pulling in. Guests in summer dresses and linen shirts carried wine bottles and coolers toward the sprawling deck that overlooked the lake. Everything looked picture-perfect until the black Ambrosia catering van pulled up. 2 staff members hopped out, unloading trays, coolers, and chafing dishes. I recognized the taller one, Paul, the lead coordinator, because I'd seen his name on both my catering charge receipts. He carried himself with that brisk, professional air of someone who'd done this 100 times. But when he reached the porch, I saw him glance down at a clipboard, frown, and check it twice. I knew exactly what he was seeing. The accounts manager I'd spoken with had been thorough. She'd flagged my family's account internally with a payment hold notice. No food served until the bill was settled in full, up front, by the client. Not a family friend, not "we'll pay later," and definitely not someone's unsuspecting relative's credit card. From my car, I couldn't hear the conversation, but I didn't need to. I watched Paul speak to my father at the top of the porch steps. Dad's shoulders stiffened. He gestured toward the house, then toward his pocket like he was about to pull out a card. Paul shook his head. More gesturing. Then my mother joined in, her polite smile just a little too tight, like she was trying to charm her way through it. Paul didn't budge. By 1:10, guests were milling around with empty plates, clearly confused. By 1:15, the trays were still closed, and the staff were standing by the van, arms crossed. The sun was bright, the air was warm, and my family's big reunion lunch was turning into a slow-motion disaster. I pictured the texts starting to buzz through the group chat. I pictured Emma glancing nervously at the guests, realizing the spotlight was about to turn on her. And right on cue, I saw her storm out to the porch in a pastel sundress, phone in hand, pointing at the catering van like she was issuing a command. Paul stood his ground. See, Ambrosia wasn't just withholding the food. They'd also removed my family's pre-authorization from their system, which meant if my parents wanted lunch served, They'd have to produce a valid card on the spot and pay the entire amount, plus the outstanding balance from last December's unpaid charge. From the shifting body language, the heated gestures, and the way my father's hand froze midair when he pulled out his wallet, I could tell it wasn't happening. Maybe they didn't have the funds handy. Maybe they thought their reputation would carry them through. Either way, Ambrosia wasn't playing their game anymore. By 1:30, the catering van rolled away with every last tray of food. Guests started leaving in small groups, some shaking their heads, others clearly annoyed. My parents stayed on the porch, stiff and motionless, Emma pacing with her phone pressed to her ear. And me? I took one last sip of my coffee, started the car, and drove away. I didn't need to see the aftermath in person, because the best part was still coming. By the next morning, my phone was lighting up with more family activity than it had seen in months. Missed calls, voicemails, and a string of increasingly desperate texts. Mom, I can't believe you'd stoop this low. Dad, we had important guests there, Adrian. You embarrassed us. Emma, you've ruined your relationship with this family forever. Hope you're proud. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't need to. They'd already written the ending themselves. Word was spreading fast. A friend of mine who worked with one of the lake house guests sent me a play-by-play. How the reunion became a whispered scandal before the day was over. How a few relatives who'd always taken my parents' side were now openly questioning why they'd been treating me like the villain all these years. But the real hit came a week later. Ambrosia's payment hold note, now bolstered with the full record of unpaid charges, had circulated to nearly every major catering company in the city. My family was unofficially blacklisted. No one would book them without full upfront payment in cash. When I finally answered my father's call, it wasn't to apologize. It was to lay things out plainly. You've been using me like a credit card you never intended to pay. That ends today. I've disputed the charges, and the bank has sided with me. You can deal with the balance yourselves. There was a long silence before he muttered, "You've burned this bridge, Adrian." I almost laughed. No, you set it on fire years ago. I just watched it finally collapse. Over the next month, their silence became permanent. No invites, no fake pleasantries, no passive-aggressive comments about my absence. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't miss it. My life was full, my job thriving, my circle of friends real, my weekends spent with people who didn't see me as a wallet. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'd think about that day at the lake house. I'd imagine the moment when the last guest left, the deck empty, the table bare. My family, standing there with nothing to serve, no one to charm, and no one left to blame but themselves. And that image, of them holding their forks over empty plates, was all the closure I'd ever need.